started going to the gym late at night because I liked the quiet. No one waiting for machines, no small talk, just me and the weights. It was peaceful. At first. My gym recently went through a renovation. They opened up a new studio in the back with floor-to-ceiling mirrors on all sides. They called it the Mirror Room. It was supposed to be for yoga and Pilates classes, but when it wasn't booked, members could use it freely. I thought it'd be perfect for shadowboxing. One night, around 11:45 p.m., I wandered into the room, dimly lit and completely empty. I stood in the center and began throwing a few jabs, watching my reflection mimic every move. At least I thought it did. The first time I noticed something was off, I shrugged it off as sleep deprivation. I turned to grab my water bottle, but for just a second, I could have sworn my reflection turned a moment later, like it hesitated. I laughed, told myself I was being paranoid. But over the next few nights, the weirdness got worse. One time, my reflection's mouth moved, even though I wasn't speaking. Another night, I blinked, and it didn't. I stood frozen for a solid minute, staring into my own eyes, trying to catch it slipping again. And it did. Each night after that, I stayed longer, testing the reflection. Jumping, spinning suddenly, covering one eye. It kept up most of the time, but now and then, it glitched. I mentioned it to the front desk girl once, half joking. She gave me a weird look and said the security cameras in the mirror room had been malfunctioning since the remodel. No footage ever saved from that room. Last week I stayed until closing. The gym was completely empty. I was back in the mirror room, doing lunges, watching myself like usual. But this time, my reflection just stopped. It stood up straight and stared at me while I kept moving. Then, it smiled. Not a normal smile. It was wide, unnatural, too many teeth. My stomach dropped. I backed away thinking maybe I'd hit my head or passed out, but I hadn't. My reflection stepped forward. Not in sync with me. On its own. I turned to run, and that's when the lights cut out. Pitch black. When they came back on a few seconds later, I was alone. The reflection was back to normal, mirroring me perfectly. But I haven't gone back since. Every mirror I pass now, at home, in stores, even my car's rear view, I can't stop watching, because one of these days, I think it's going to smile again. And I don't think it's going to let me leave. I was never really into gyms, but after turning 30, I decided it was time to take my health seriously. I joined this boutique fitness studio near my apartment. It had glowing Yelp reviews, trendy lighting, spotless equipment, and a whole roster of trainers who looked like they belonged on magazine covers. My trainer's name was Austin. He was friendly, enthusiastic, maybe a little too attentive, but I brushed it off. People in the fitness world are just like that, right? At first, the sessions were great. He pushed me, encouraged me, even sent follow-up texts to check in on how sore I was after leg day. It felt personal, supportive. But soon things got weird. He started showing up at the gym even when I hadn't booked a session. I'd catch him glancing over during my solo workouts, hovering just a little too close. He'd make offhand comments that implied he knew where I lived, like mentioning the coffee shop beneath my apartment, even though I'd never told him where I lived. I still gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then I canceled a session one evening, saying I wasn't feeling well. 30 minutes later, I got a text. "Hope you feel better. Too bad. You looked like you were on fire in that new tank top." I hadn't posted any photos. I hadn't seen him that day. But I had been at the gym earlier, just grabbing something from my locker. I asked the front desk about it. That's when things unraveled. They told me Austin wasn't even scheduled to be there that week. He wasn't even on shift the day I signed up. He'd specifically requested to be assigned to me. They didn't think much of it at the time. I went home and started digging. His social media was spotless, almost too clean. But a few clicks into some old news articles, and I found it. A different name, same face. Years ago, he'd been quietly let go from another fitness center across town after multiple clients complained about feeling followed and unsafe. No official charges, but the whispers were enough to end his career there. I reported it to the gym. They promised to look into it, but by the time I returned for my next visit, his photo and profile were already gone from the trainer wall. Like he'd never been there. I never saw him again. But for weeks afterward, I'd get this prickling feeling on my neck whenever I walked home at night, like someone was still watching from a distance, waiting. I don't go to that gym anymore. In fact, I haven't stepped foot inside any gym since. Now I work out at home, where I can lock the door and control who's watching me. I always hated working out late, but it was the only time my friend Kyle and I could fit it in. We both worked long shifts, and the gym down the street stayed open until midnight. It wasn't fancy, just an old converted warehouse with flickering lights and a weird smell that never quite left. But it was cheap and quiet. That night felt off from the moment we walked in. The parking lot was completely empty. Not unusual for 11 p.m., but still, it felt strange. Inside, the front desk was unmanned, which wasn't too weird. The owner usually left after 9, trusting the cameras and swipe cards to handle things. Still, I remember feeling like someone was watching us the moment we scanned in. Kyle was in a bad mood. He had had a rough day and was unusually snappy. By the time we got to the free weights, we were barely talking. He made some joke about me skipping leg day. I made a jab about his form, and before I knew it, we were arguing. Nothing serious, but enough for him to grab his bag and storm off toward the locker room. I stayed behind, thinking he'd cool off and come back. I finished one more set, then went to check on him. That's when I noticed something weird. The locker room door was slightly open, but no lights were on inside. I called his name, no answer. I checked my phone, no texts. I was about to push the door open when I heard the slam of weights from across the gym. I turned, walked back toward the main floor, and found it completely empty. No weights out of place, no movement, just silence. And then the lights went off. At first, I thought it was a power outage, but I noticed something on the wall. The emergency lights hadn't kicked in. I reached for my phone, but the screen stayed black, dead. That's when the panic kicked in. I tried the front door. It was locked. I hadn't even known it could lock from the outside. I banged on it, shouted for help, but all I heard was the echo of my own voice bouncing off metal and rubber. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy. Not Kyle. I ducked behind the squat rack and held my breath. Whoever was walking around wasn't in a hurry. They were searching, checking aisles between machines, peering around corners. I caught a glimpse of boots, dark clothing, no gym bag. This wasn't a random member, and they weren't looking for a treadmill. I stayed crouched, heart pounding, until the footsteps faded. I used the cover of the machines to move toward the back exit, but when I reached it, it was chained shut. I looked around for something, anything I could use. Then I saw it. Kyle's bag, sitting by the back row of benches, but no Kyle. I still don't know how I got out. At some point I triggered the fire alarm. Maybe the smoke from the hot water pipe I broke set it off. I don't know. But the sirens blared and the front door finally clicked open. I bolted into the night without looking back. Kyle never answered his phone after that night. He didn't show up to work. And when I went back to the gym the next day, it was closed. No signs, no explanation, just gone. I still don't know who was in there with us or why. All I know is that I should have left when Kyle did, but I stayed for one last set.